edition of Ruckus is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: the two presidential candidates go one-on-one. In Missouri politics, campaign finance takes center stage, and it's school finance again in Kansas, plus roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and talk with a pair of physicians from the University of Kansas Hospital who are concerned about potential changes in the way liver transplants are allocated. Their concern stems from a plan under review by UNOS, the United Network for Organ Sharing. Joining me now to explain all of this, I trust, are Dr. Timothy Schmidt, Director of Transplantation at the hospital, and transplant surgeon Dr. Sean Coomer. Doctors, gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for coming in to be with us on Ruckus. Let's start with this, Tim, in just basic terms. What's the issue and why are the two of you so concerned?
Thanks for having us, Mike. I think our concern with this new proposal by UNOS is the dramatic shift in organ sharing that will happen. There's a proposal out there that will broaden the sharing in the country, and there are a lot of places that will be hurt by this. In fact, the proposal stresses that no more lives will be saved, there will be less transplants done. It will in fact cost more to do it, but the organs will shift from rural areas and the South to large urban areas like New York and New England.
So it would hurt Kansas City and the region that Kansas City is located in for the UNOS network, right?
Correct. That's not really why we're against it, but it will have that result where we will see 30 to 40% decrease in our transplant volume each year.
Sean, what exactly is UNOS and how does it come to be in charge of these things?
The UNOS stands for United Network of Organ Sharing. It's based in Richmond, Virginia. It's a private company that has the contract from the federal government to allocate organs across the country, all organs.
Well, and Tim, you want people who are concerned about this to go to a website and explain their point of view and express regret about the way this is developing. What impact is that likely to have?
Yeah, you can go to the website and post public comment about, you can read the proposal and then decide for yourself what you want to write in the public comment. UNOS will take the public comment and then kind of analyze what the public says and what the regions say in the regional meetings and try to either modify or change the proposal and hopefully represent it in a way that's more has more consensus with the country.
Is there a deadline for public comment?
The deadline is October 15th, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. But before that, you can make your public comment.
Well, let's go to the website. Give us the location of the website. We'll put it on the screen, and people can make note and take action if they choose.
The optn.transplant.hrsa.gov, and there'll be a section for public comment, and you can read about liver redistribution.
Sean, I read there was a big meeting of folks from this region over the weekend, and the meeting concluded with a vote against this plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But that doesn't have any real impact on the decision by UNOS?
As far as we know, we're not entirely sure. The president for UNOS has suggested that these are just comments from the transplant community at this point. Whether they will vote for that to actually be enacted or not enacted, we're not entirely sure at this point.
Tim, how many liver transplants take place in the Kansas City area, would you say, in the course of a typical year?
Our transplant program does between 110 and 90 transplants a year, which puts us in the top 10% of the country for volume. So we're a fairly busy transplant program.
And you both do transplantation surgery, right?
Correct. We both do liver transplant and kidney transplant.
Sean, why do people have liver problems?
Well, there's lots of reasons. Some are acquired, and some are just bad genetics and autoimmune deficiencies.
All right, and Tim, where do these organ transplants come from? Who are the donors?
Yeah, that really is the foundation for all transplant.
You need more.
Right,
people.
we need more donors. To put it in perspective, there are 16 to 17,000 people on a liver list nationwide, and 6,000 liver transplants a year. So everywhere in the country there is a shortage of donors.
But when you go get your driver's license, they ask if you'd like to be an organ donor. But liver transplants can come from people who are still alive, right? A portion of a living liver. How do people make themselves available for that?
There are certain centers in the country that do living donor liver transplant. It's highly technical and advanced, and it's starting to gain hold as the organ the gap between supply and demand widens. We are not doing them yet at Kansas City. We've contemplated on started the program, but yeah, there are very few centers in the country that do living donor liver transplant.
Let me wrap this up quickly. Sean, how long is the typical waiting period for a liver transplant?
Well, it varies. It's a need-based program and based on how sick the patient is. But nonetheless, most folks in this region are transplanted within 6 to 9 months.
Not 24 hours or
No.
a week and a half. All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Hope it works out well.
Thank you for having us.
We've just seen Dr. Timothy Schmidt and Dr. Sean Coomer from the University of Kansas Hospital. Now let's meet the panel and see if we can start a ruckus. Denidre Herbert joins us for the first time. She's a columnist with the Kansas City Star, whose work appears in the 913 section. Steve Glorioso is a media and political consultant. Mike Sanders is the former Jackson County executive, now in private legal practice with the firm of Humphrey, Farrington, and McLean. And prominent, influential attorney Steve J. Marakian is with the firm of Wersch, Hobbs, and Marakian. Welcome to all of you. Denidre, it's good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
The J stands for what, Mike?
Justice.
Exactly.
If the past is indeed prologue, we can anticipate that the Kansas Supreme Court will decide soon that $4 billion a year is not enough to operate the state's school districts and will order the governor to allocate as much as $500 million more each year. This at a time when the state's overall budget is in a precarious situation, with revenues continuing to fall short of projections. A new legislature won't take office until January, and no one knows how long it will take for the new legislators to resolve the financial issues, or if they even can. 5 Supreme Court justices are on the ballot for retention in November, and critics of the court are campaigning to get 4 of them removed. So let's start there. Denidre, is there any serious reason to believe that the court won't rule on behalf of the school districts and heighten the state's several financial crises?
No, there's no reason to believe they won't demand that the state government pour more money into schools. It's sad that we even have to have the discussion, because I believe for at least the last 20 years, the legislature approves some money, creates a formula, tweaks the formula, somebody sues, they go back to the justices demand more money, rinse, cycle, repeat. We've been doing this now for at least since 1992, but I'm told longer. That's just as, I'm not that old. So that's as far as
I am, and the answer is yes, it has been going on for a long time.
Right. So these justices recently on September 21st heard arguments in whether or not school funding was adequate, and I think a lot of people might not even know this. Adequate isn't even in the Kansas Constitution, so they're now ruling on what they said last week, and it's all a big ploy to put more money in the pockets of administrators, in my opinion.
Before we move on, let me ask you this. Do you think that the court will decide before the election, when 4 of them at least are under some pressure they may be removed? I don't know that that will actually happen, but they're up for retention. Do you think they'll try to decide before November 8th?
I don't think they will. I don't think they will. I think they're scared, and I think they should be.
Steve, what do you think? Do you think the court's going to rule before the election?
I do. And I'm not going to say it's overtly political, but I do think they are concerned. They want to have their ruling. They want to have it in place. I just want to follow up on this notion we've talked before. You know my position that the court should not be overstepping its role, constitutional role, by deciding how much money is allocated or even how it's divided. But I want to bring some facts. Facts are always unpleasant for people who are working on emotion, as I think the court is, quite frankly. Kansas City, Missouri spends about $11,000 per student. Shawnee Mission District, which I think people would say is probably a better district than Kansas City, Missouri, and gives better education, spends about $8,600. Garden City, okay, and Wichita, the greatly disadvantaged areas, they get about $11,000 per student, okay? Kansas and Missouri both spend about the same on average over the states. They both have the same graduation rates. The places in the United States that have the highest money per capita, which is the District of Columbia and New York, have the lowest graduation rates, okay? It's got nothing to do with money. It's got to do with all kinds of things in terms of how you spend the money, how you educate the kids. But the bottom line is, the Supreme Court of Kansas should not be telling the legislature how much you have to allocate. It's ridiculous, it's absurd,
Well,
it's not in the Constitution.
I think
all the Kansas Constitution talks about is a suitable education.
yeah.
It doesn't give the court the power to say what is suitable.
Well, I think the court has made that decision in some states. In other states, the court says, no, that's a political issue and we shouldn't be involved. But Mike, let's take a look at the situation in Kansas. What are the options for the new legislature? Change the tax breaks or increase taxes
Mike,
beyond that?
Mike, that's spot on. I mean, I think that's the question. I think I agree with Steve. I think the Supreme Court probably will rule before the election cycle. I think it's probably smart politically.
That does
for them
seem
not to.
political, doesn't it?
It does and it doesn't. I think in their own self-interest it may not be wise, but my experience with courts is they're going to do what they think and they're going to do it on their time frame and ignore the political consequences. But back to your point, what we're looking at potentially, and I think you're probably looking at this in the state of Kansas, is the equivalent of budgetary Armageddon. Every time I've been here, we're talking about the giant donut hole in the Kansas budget. And if you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 additional million to $1 billion to find in that budget, you got two very, very dramatic and difficult choices. Dramatically cut services even more or raise taxes. And I'm not sure that there are any good answers here. All the simple fixes have been used, and I think they're in a very difficult spot.
Steve, tax breaks do work some places, don't they? Cutting taxes, hasn't that stimulated the economy?
Well,
Didn't that work in the 80s for the Reagan administration nationally?
You mean before he raised taxes 9 times?
Well, they
after
weren't
he realized
major
he
tax
blew
increases. Those were revenue enhancements, Steve. Come on.
Well, revenue enhancement. I mean, it doesn't work. George Bush almost imploded our economy.
But give me the answer to the question. Can
Nonetheless,
tax cuts stimulate the economy? Does that not sometimes happen?
If they're targeted and not aimed, like Republicans like to do, the very wealthy, if they're targeted to the middle class and the working people in the country, it can. But, you know, they've blown a hole in the budget. And you know what? I'm such a strong Missourian. I grew up, you know, despising Kansas. They're destroying the state. It was a wonderful state, and it was known for its education, and they're poking holes in it. And you know, I grew up where a lot of my friends moved to Kansas for, you know, as their kids got to school age, and they're starting to move back. And I will say to my friend Marakian, look at the state of Minnesota, one of the highest tax states in the world, and they have the best education.
Oh, okay.
There is some correlation to money,
not-
well spent, and a good education.
We're spending more money than we ever have on education.
Now we're going
Ever.
now we're going to go to Missouri, Steve. It is frequently said that what goes around comes around, and one ballot issue in Missouri this fall may prove how true that is. The issue is campaign finance and involves how much money one can give to candidates and political parties. Right now, there is no limit. If the constitutional amendment is approved, contributions will be capped at $2,600 per election to candidates and $25,000 to parties, and you could throw a great party with $25,000. Missouri voters approved limits in 1994, but the state legislature repealed them in 2008. So what is the case, if there is one, for reinstating these limits? Mike Sanders.
So let's start with something that happened here fairly recently. Pew Research did a poll, and they asked the American public at large, and this was a wide open question, what is the #1 problem? Blank, right? What is the #1 problem with politics and politicians in America? #1 answer, and it wasn't really even anything close in terms of second, was massive infusion of contributions from special interests. #1 problem facing politics in America. You look at the dramatic rise in cynicism at an all-time high about the political process, distrust for governmental institutions, and similarly, at the same time, all-time high for campaign contributions. It's a tsunami of cash that washes through the political process, and I think it infuses a great amount of cynicism in people. Just talk about what's on the ballot for Missouri, and I think it's going to pass. I think everything shows that it's going to pass fairly handily. Is it perfect? No. I don't think anyone's found a perfect solution to fix this problem around the country, but it's a fine start. However, there are Mack truck-size holes that are still going to be within the Missouri system, not the least of which is no limits for local governments, no limits for third-party committees, no limits for regional candidates, just state and statewide. It's a fine start, and I don't know that fine or perfect ought to get in the way of fine.
Well, Deidre, do you think it's fair to say that campaign reforms really don't reform anything, that in a few years people will complain about the reforms not being successful?
And we'll be in the same place again. And I think these limits, period, are an attack on free speech a little bit. If I have $8 million and I want to buy a billboard that says, go vote for Brownback or go vote for, pick your guy, I should be able to do that. Not only should I be able to do that, I shouldn't have to put a paid-for buy on a billboard. It's my money. I earned it. I should get to do what I want with it. It's a free speech issue.
If you've got $8 million, you can be on Ruckus every week.
I do not have $8 million.
She would need to be on record.
That's
I
true.
have $8 million.
Steve Marakian, should corporations and individuals be limited in how much money they can spend on campaigns? Is she right?
Well, certainly, because our Constitution means nothing. So let's just do away with the Constitution. Let's not have free speech. Let's go ahead and say you can speak politically, but you cannot use your money to support a candidate that you want to speak for you. This is nonsense. The Supreme Court got it right. Mike is also right. No matter what you do, you're going to have ways, loopholes to get around it. My suggestion is this. Let's limit contributions and do everything through a foundation. Why don't we have a foundation, let's say? Maybe we'll call it the Trump Foundation or the Clinton Foundation. And then we can get all the money we want, and we'll say we're not getting it from the Koch brothers. This is nonsense. These limitations are unconstitutional. We have a constitution, but we conveniently ignore it whenever we decide it doesn't favor us.
Okay, also on the Missouri ballot this fall, a constitutional amendment to require showing a photo ID before you vote. So, Mike, why is that controversial?
Voter ID is controversial? I didn't realize that. I've not heard about this. First I've heard of this issue.
Where you heard?
Look, I mean, if you think about it, it breaks down completely on partisan lines. Democrats think it's voter suppression, and that what you're suppressing are minorities and poor people from coming to the polls. And so if you believe that, you hate it. On the other side...
Do you believe that?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that here in just a second, but let me finalize
Okay,
this.
Mr. Trump.
Okay. All right.
Offensive.
So I think on the other side, you've got, on the Republican side or the more conservative side, that there's massive voter fraud, and that if you don't have this, thousands of people that are living right now in cemeteries across the country are coming to vote for candidates. So either side you're on, battle lines are clearly drawn. However, here's what I think. I think that both sides amplify it for their own reasons. I think if this were to pass, I don't think you're going to see immense voter suppression of anybody necessarily. But I also think that this is also a solution in search of a problem. I don't think there's massive voter fraud. I think at that end, though, it is very controversial.
Steve, if somebody doesn't have a photo ID under this amendment, if it passes, you can still vote in Missouri, and the state will take your picture and put it on a little card for you so you can have no trouble in the future. You have to have a photo ID to do almost anything. Why not vote?
First of all, I have 3 members of my family who don't have a photo ID. They don't drive anymore. And they have to go down and get a photo ID, one of these state IDs, if they choose to. But at the age of 96, they're not exactly hopping down there to do it.
Well, they have to get to the polls to vote, don't they?
Well, I understand, but why that threshold? But first of all, it's all bogus, and he's right about the fact it's so partisan. I mean, we've seen in state after state, under the guise of voter ID, credible voter suppression. And I'll give you one very easy example from North Carolina. They have a thing that said at 7 o'clock when the polls close, and anyone who's in line doesn't get to vote. You know who votes disproportionately at the end of the day? It's a scientific fact. Blacks.
What does that do with voter ID?
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying it's part of this whole effort under the guise of ID to stop people who are vote Democrat from voting. And there's so many examples. Now, this bill is not as onerous as the others, okay? But the fact is, I don't know. We haven't had any fraud. Here's how you steal an election. You steal an election when you count the votes.
That's the way not to have any fraud, to have people present IDs showing
what's
they
the choice?
are
Okay, let's say
supposed to
2
be
people vote that shouldn't, but you knock 8,000 people out. You know what the Republicans are doing.
No,
You guys
I
are
do
just
know what the Republicans
kidding
do. They're
people.
trying to make sure that
That's-
people who vote are legitimate
really?
and they
That's the
are
misconception.
people who are citizens.
just-
Right. The misconception is that the only people who can't get IDs are ethnic minorities who would vote Democrat. Why do we believe that the 96-year-old grandma that Steve's talking about, why do we believe Republicans aren't ever old, that they can't drive? I mean,
Yeah.
voter ID
I
doesn't...
defy that,
Exactly.
description.
Anybody who wants an ID in this country can get one free, very, very simple.
We got to stop this. I got to move on. It was not Lincoln Douglas, but then who thought it would be? As Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump faced off for the first of 3 presidential debates, there was no shortage of topics, but perhaps a shortage of answers. One of the recurring topics was taxes.
You are going to approve one of the biggest tax increases in history. You are going to drive business out. Your regulations are a disaster, and you're going to increase regulations all over the place. And by the way, my tax cut is the biggest since Ronald Reagan. I'm very proud of it. It will create tremendous numbers of new jobs. I'm going to cut taxes, big league, and you're going to raise taxes, big league. End of story.
Another approach to taxes came up when Secretary Clinton suggested she knew why Mr. Trump was not releasing his tax returns.
It just seems to me that this is something that the American people deserve to see, and I have no reason to believe that he's ever going to release his tax returns, because there's something he's hiding. And we'll guess. We'll keep guessing at what it might be that he's hiding. But I think the question is, were he ever to get near the White House, what would be those conflicts? Who does he owe money to? Well, he owes you the answers to that, and he should provide them.
So let's start with the Steves. Who won the debate? Glorioso first, then Marakian.
Well, I don't think there's...
And we're going to have to move quickly.
I know.
This,
Clinton won the debate. There have been two actually scientific polls that show clearly, and anybody with an ounce of sense who watched it, besides knowing that Trump lost it, had to be relatively insulted that in the year 2016, we have a candidate for president who doesn't hardly know a thing about the issues at stake. He ran out of stamina at the end of the debate. He almost didn't finish it, and he was a disaster.
Steve Marakian, who won the debate?
Well, Trump won the debate from this standpoint. Debates in modern America have nothing to do with debating points or debating style or even substance. They have to do with need. Trump needed to do one thing: stay on the stage for 90 minutes, stay on his feet, and not look like he was a madman. Hillary needed a knockout punch, or at least a knockdown punch. Hillary spent 90 minutes talking to her base, did a wonderful job. She's a good debater. She didn't say anything of substance, she talked to her base. Trump spent 90 minutes talking to people in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Florida, and if he wins Pennsylvania, he wins the election.
Denidri, was the moderator Lester Holt fair in the way he handled the questions and the debate?
No, he wasn't fair. It was almost as if he was lobbing softballs up to Hillary to hit out of the park. And even the questions that he chose, things about birtherism, this is the candidate's 90 minutes to talk about the issues and policies and lay them out. If they want to talk about birtherism or whatever, do that in a 30-second campaign commercial. We don't need to spend 90 minutes on it.
Mike Sanders, you've been in debates, you've been a participant. The moderator should take control, right? Have control over the debate. I always felt during this that Lester Holt was not in control.
I think that's right, and I'd say in debates like this, sometimes the moderator's with you, you think, and sometimes they're not. At the end of the day, the Lord helps those who help themselves. If Donald Trump feels like the moderator's not being fair, he should have injected himself. That's sort of his brand, is to be that guy, and he should have himself taken control of that debate, but he didn't.
He could have brought up other issues. He didn't. I mean, it was a total debacle. I can't say anybody.
Don't you think the moderator owes it to all of us, though, to talk about things that really matter?
Why do you think birtherism doesn't matter? It's a racist attack the guy did for 8 years.
Which Hillary started. But we all ignore that.
And you remember the question, Steve, you remember the question was, Donald, what do we do about our racial divide? Now, is that a controversial question?
All right, here.
I mean, it's just like, help yourself is right.
If you can help yourself and be quiet for a moment. We're going to move on to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes celebrate or eviscerate people. I like that. People and events and news. Let's start with Mr. Glorioso, 30 seconds.
I would like to roast Chris Kobach, who, of course, is at it again, trying to disenfranchise Americans from voting. One of the things I'm most proud of in my life is I was many times part of an international team monitoring elections in former dictatorships, places like Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan, Albania, even Russia. I would like to take old Chris to some of these countries and show him what undemocratic dictators try to do in an election, very similar what Chris Kobach tries to do the voters in Kansas.
I bet he's got some countries he'd like to take you to as well. Steve Marakian.
FBI Director James Comey has completely botched the investigation into the greatest national security breach since the Rosenberg sold atomic secrets to the Russians. In giving immunity to all material witnesses and getting nothing in return, the FBI, which now apparently stands for freaking blithering idiots, has enabled obstruction of Congress and made prosecution of people who did it impossible. Not one person who knowingly passed, received, or even destroyed top secret communications will be held accountable. Not since J. Edgar Hoover has an FBI director brought more discredit on its esteemed agents than has Mr. Comey. He has breached trust with the American people.
I would like to roast some special little snowflakes at the University of Kansas who this past week went to a meeting of Young Americans for Freedom and screamed those poor 7 students who were trying to meet and talk about First Amendment free speech on college campuses. These special little snowflakes screamed curse words at them, called them white nationalists. It was an embarrassment over at Wheat Waving University for everyone in Kansas that these students behaved this way. Their video of their poor behavior went viral, and now we all get to be embarrassed at what happened at KU last week.
And Mr. Sanders.
I want to toast the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce and specifically Joe Reardon, its leader, for the Leadership Exchange in Dallas over the last weekend. While there, it's always interesting to go to other very successful cities and see what their impressions of Kansas City are. Universally, with every presenter, when they were asked what is the #1 issue facing Kansas City in terms of growth going forward, #1 issue was dilapidated airport.
All right, and finally, as you just heard from Denidre, we hear much about the imposition of political correctness on college campuses. So it's refreshing to read what one dean wrote to the incoming class of 2020. We don't support trigger warnings, do not cancel speakers because their topics might prove controversial, and do not condone the creation of safe spaces where individuals can retreat from ideas at odds with their own. Earning a well-deserved toast is Dean of Students Jay Ellison at the University of Chicago. And that is Ruckus for this week. Great panel. Back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.